Continuing on in our One From Every Team series, we have one good thing about all 31 NHL teams, and even though some teams have it a lot worse than others and are in some pretty bad situations, it's honestly not that difficult to find one good thing about every team in the NHL. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video, starting off with the Anaheim Ducks. For the Ducks, they have John Gibson, who is one of the best goaltenders in the entire NHL, and anytime you have him in net, he has the capability of stealing you a game on any given night, and they still have a very solid team when healthy, and there is a chance that they bounce back and make the playoffs next year. While I wouldn't count on it, there is a chance, especially with John Gibson in net. For the Arizona Coyotes, they just added Phil Kessel to a young team that was already on the rise. They had a very strong year this past season and almost made the playoffs, albeit in a weaker Western Conference wildcard race. Adding Phil Kessel to a team that really struggled to put the puck in the net this past season is a smart move, and he has that star power. He's a big name player. Ticket sales go up. I'm sure they sold a lot of Phil Kessel jerseys. Overall, it was just a fantastic move for the entire organization. Moving on to the Boston Bruins, they have one of, if not the best lines in the entire NHL. Patrice Bergeron centering Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak, and I think if they all stay healthy for the full 82 game season this up and coming year, there's honestly a strong possibility that all three of these guys could be pushing 100 points, and I think that alone is super impressive and definitely a good thing about this Boston team. For the Buffalo Sabres, they improved their blue line this offseason. They added Brandon Montour at the trade deadline this past year, and getting him for a full season is definitely going to help, and they also added Colin Miller and Henry Jokiharju in the Alex Nylander trade. News actually came out today that Rasmus Ristolainen would like to be traded, so that is definitely something we're going to have to keep an eye on and see how that folds out, and it should be pretty interesting, but you never know, maybe they could get back a solid defenseman for him as well. And all in all, I just liked a lot of the moves that they made this offseason. They also added Marcus Johansson, and I think there is a strong possibility that Buffalo finally gets back into the postseason this up and coming year. Moving on to the Calgary Flames, they're still a very good young team. They just won the Western Conference this past year, and that in itself is a very good thing, albeit they didn't really have the greatest luck in the postseason. That definitely could be a learning experience for a lot of the young players on this team, like Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, Elias Lindholm, and Matthew Tkachuk. The future is definitely very, very bright for the Calgary Flames, and they're also pretty set up to win right now. For the Carolina Hurricanes, they just made the conference finals, and they're still a very young team and most likely going to get better. I know a lot of people picked them to probably regress a little bit next season, and while yes, that does make sense, they're still going to be set up for the future and to be relatively competitive right now. Sebastian Aho as your young franchise centerman is definitely an awesome piece to have, and you also have Andrei Svechnikov heading into his second season. I just love the look of this team. They also added Erik Haula and Ryan Dzingel this summer. I think they're really set up good for the future, and the best thing about them has to be they just made the conference finals. Moving on, for the Chicago Blackhawks, they have an improved goalie situation. They just signed Robin Lehner as a free agent this summer, coming off a Vezina Trophy caliber season, and now having him as most likely your starter, or maybe even like a tandem with Corey Crawford if he is healthy. I think that is definitely very solid, and if they can score goals like they did this past season, and now having a better goaltending situation can help keep pucks out of the net, there definitely is a strong chance Chicago could make that jump and get right back into the playoffs. Next team is the Colorado Avalanche, and they're set up to win right now, and they're also set up big time for the future. Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen still very young, Gabe Landeskog still relatively young, and they have two blue chip prospects on the point in Bowen Byram and Cale Makar, and they also had a great offseason addressing the scoring depth problem that they had last year, bringing in Nazem Kadri, Jonas Donskoy, and Andrei Burakovsky, who is probably going to make up their entire second line. I'm a big fan of the moves they made. I'm really excited to watch them next year, and they're just in the perfect situation right now in my opinion. Moving along to the Columbus Blue Jackets, and while yes, times may look tough right now for them as they lost a ton this offseason, they still have an amazing young blue line with guys like Zach Werenski, Seth Jones, and Ryan Murray, and you still have some solid forwards there, and I think this still will be a competitive team next year. And like I said, while things might look really bad for them right now, I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. Next up, we have the Dallas Stars, and for them, I just said they're legit contenders next season. They were a very good team this past year. Ben Bishop had a ridiculous year, and they added Joe Pavelski this offseason, which I think is a very good move. They also added Carey, which you never know if that works out and maybe he scores 20 goals or something like that. That could turn out to be a really solid signing as well. But now Miro Heiskanen is 1 year older. You're going to get a full season of Rope Hintz, hopefully playing like he did in the playoffs. I just love the look of this team. Obviously, they still have Ben and Seguin, and they definitely are one of the favorites in the West next year. Moving along, we have my favorite team, the Detroit Red Wings, and while yes, we are rebuilding right now, we do have lots of solid young talent to lead us into the future. Andreas Athanasiou just had a breakout year. Dylan Larkin had a great season. We still have Anthony Mantha, Tyler Bertuzzi, Michael Rasmussen, and then we have Philip Zadina, Moritz Seider, Philip Hronek, and Dennis Cholowski. Lots of young talent there to really lead this rebuild in the right direction. Definitely probably going to be, not so good over the next 1 or 2 more years, but I like what we have for the future. Moving on to the Edmonton Oilers, pretty self-explanatory. They literally have the best player in the world, and they also have a great co-star in Leon Draisaitl. Now it's just a matter of them getting the pieces around them so that they can really become a competitive team. Moving on to the Florida Panthers, they should 100% be a playoff team this up and coming season, and you could honestly look up and down this roster and say they legit should be contenders next year. I wouldn't go that far just yet because obviously a lot of the new faces have not even played a game with Florida yet, but they had an amazing offseason and I'm definitely excited to see how they play next year. For the Los Angeles Kings, the Jake Muzzin trade really looks good for them right now. They acquired Carl Grundstrom in that deal, who I think is going to be fantastic for them. He looked really good in the NHL games he played for the Kings after the trade this past season, and you never know, maybe he can slot into a top 6 role and give them some much needed youth and some scoring punch next year, and Sean Durzi hopefully can turn out to be a solid defenseman for them in the future. I just love the trade because Jake Muzzin really wasn't a part of their future, and it's not like they're going to be competing to win over the next couple of years. Moving along to the Minnesota Wild, Matt Dumba is a beast. He was on pace to have a ridiculous season scoring wise for a defenseman had he not gotten hurt this past year. Hopefully he can stay healthy next season because I honestly think he can be one of the top defensemen in the league. I might be too high on him, and I know a lot of people aren't his biggest fan, especially, some fans of the Minnesota Wild, but he definitely is the future face of that blue line and maybe even the future face of that entire franchise moving forward. Next up, we have the Montreal Canadiens, and Carey Price is healthy right now, and that is a big win for them because when he's playing, he is one of the best goaltenders in the entire NHL, and they're coming off a season where they probably overachieved a little bit, and you never know, with the talent that they have and a healthy Carey Price, there is a strong chance this team could make the playoffs next year. For the Nashville Predators, a pretty easy thing to say, but they added Matt Duchene to a team that was already very good and one of the best teams in the Western Conference, and now you have a solidified 1-2 punch as your first and second line center in Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene. Maybe he is a little overpaid, yes, but that is the price you have to pay to bring in guys of his caliber, and this is definitely a team that I think is going to be a powerhouse out west once again. Moving along to the New Jersey Devils, they had an amazing offseason. They acquired PK Subban, they obviously drafted Jack Hughes #1 overall, they signed Wayne Simmons, they also traded for and signed Nikita Gusev. I just think this is going to be a super exciting team to watch next year, and if Taylor Hall can stay healthy and play like he did in the 2017-18 season, I honestly don't see any way this team misses the playoffs unless Corey Schneider has another abysmal year. Moving along, for the New York Islanders, Barry Trotz is your head coach, and whenever you have him behind the bench, you're going to be a relatively competitive team. We saw what he did this past season. It was honestly amazing, and while yes, they might drop off a little bit this up and coming year, having Barry Trotz as your head coach is definitely a good thing. For the New York Rangers, it's quite simple. They signed the biggest name free agent in Artemi Panarin. Yes, maybe he's a little bit overpaid, but like I said, that is the price you have to pay to bring in big name UFAs. They also traded for and signed Jacob Trouba, and they drafted Kaapo Kakko. They just had an amazing offseason. For the Ottawa Senators, a team with not too many bright spots, but having Thomas Chabot and Brady Tkachuk as your young franchise guys moving forward is definitely a good thing. Chabot was a beast last season, and Brady Tkachuk had a very strong rookie year as well. For the Philadelphia Flyers, they have a great young blue line led by guys like Ivan Provorov, Shane Gostisbehere, Robert Hagg, and Travis Sanheim, a solid blue line, and they have a lot of good forwards as well, and I think if everybody stays healthy and Carter Hart has a solid year as the goaltender, there is no reason why this should not be a playoff team. Next up, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins, another one that's quite simple. With Crosby and Malkin on your team, you will always be a contender, and yes, a lot of people will probably pick them to fall out of the playoffs this up and coming year, and I'm one of those guys who think there definitely is a strong chance they can. you have Crosby, Malkin, and that in itself is a fantastic thing. Moving along, we have the San Jose Sharks, and while yes, they lost a big piece of their team in Joe Pavelski this offseason when he went and signed with the Dallas Stars, they were able to bring back Erik Karlsson, and when healthy, he is one of the best defensemen in the entire NHL, and that in itself is a very, very good thing. Moving along to the St. Louis Blues, they just won the Stanley Cup. You don't really have to say much more than that. That is the best thing that could possibly happen to your team. For the Tampa Bay Lightning, they're probably still the most sacked team in the entire NHL, and even though they had a very embarrassing first round exit this past playoffs that saw them getting swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets, they're still in a very good position, and obviously that is a good thing. For the Toronto Maple Leafs, they improved their blue line this summer. Yes, they lost a little bit of forward depth, but that isn't the position that needed work. It was the blue line, and they brought in Tyson Barrie, and they brought in Cody Ceci, and maybe a guy like Timothy Liljegren is ready to come up and play in the NHL, and that in itself for this Leafs team I think is a very, very good thing. For the Vancouver Canucks, they have an amazing young core led by Elias Pettersson and Brock Besser, and now you have Quinn Hughes coming in next season and most likely playing a full-time NHL role, and obviously that right there is a very good thing, and they brought in a lot of veterans that really should help them be competitive right now and maybe even squeak into the playoffs next year. Next, we have the Vegas Golden Knights, and they have one of the best top 6 forward groups in the entire NHL. Looking at it on paper, they're going to be a very good team in terms of scoring goals, most likely a first line of Mark Stone, Paul Stastny, and Max Pacioretty, and then you follow that up with Jonathan Marchessault, Riley Smith, and William Karlsson. I'm super excited to see how this team plays next year, and most definitely to see how Mark Stone plays as the true #1 guy on a playoff team. For the Washington Capitals, they basically have the same team that won the 2018 Stanley Cup, and that alone right there is a very good thing because I see no reason why they still shouldn't be very good next year and be one of the contenders in the Eastern Conference. And now finishing out the video with the Winnipeg Jets, they have the capability of being a contender again. I know a lot of people are kind of predicting them to fall off in a big way just because they lost a lot this offseason, but me not so much. I'm still high on them. They still have a lot of top end talent, and a bounce back year from Patrick Laine, a healthy Josh Morrissey, and a bounce back year from Connor Hellebuyck, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be one of the top teams in the Western Conference. That is going to wrap up today's video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. Make sure to let me know down in the comment section what is one good thing about your favorite team, and if you disagree with any of these picks, make sure to let me know what you would say for the team that you disagree with. And with all that being said, I hope you guys all enjoyed today's video. If you did, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I will see you guys all in the next video.